Jenni Calma. I am here to share a couple cards that I created for Tonic Studios, some Valentine's Day cards. And I'm going to start by showing a couple things that I'm planning to use. I have decided I was going to use this stencil from the Crafter's Workshop that's kind of a background stencil, and it's got some hearts in there, so that's kind of what led me to pick that one. It's a 6x6, and I'm going to do two different backgrounds. One that I'm going to do sort of a background using some of the shimmer powders, and then cover it with the glimmer paste. And then the other one I'm going to do an ink background, and then on top of that use the stencil to add some embellishment mousse, sort of a tone on tone kind of color. So that's kind of what I'm thinking as far as the backgrounds, using the products. And the stamps that I'm going to use is one I got from Sizzix. It's just from my local craft store, and it's a llama set that I thought was kind of cute because two of the sentiments are, one says I'd never spit on you, and the other one says I llama love you. So I thought the spit on you one was kind of funny for my 12-year-old son, who isn't really up for lovey-dovey Valentines, but I thought it would be cute for him. So I've got all my things here in my little tray, and I'm going to use those shimmer powders, some of the vintage drops to add in on the llama's like little details in the blanket, and some of the inks, some the alcohol markers I'm going to use, and just have everything there together already. So I'm going to go ahead and start here. And the first thing I do is to stamp the llamas out using my stamp platform. It's the travel size stamp platform from Holtz. And I'm going to use the Nuvo hybrid ink. It's a black ink that is especially for anything using watercolor or the alcohol inks or alcohol markers, anything like that would use. And this is the stamp cleaner pad that I have, so I'm going to use that too, even though I really don't need much of it right now. But anyway, I stamped 4 of the llamas because there is a die in the set that is for the little blanket on top of it, so I thought I would do that one and add it as a layer on top of the other one. So I plan to color 2 of the llamas completely and then 2 of the blankets for that. So I'm going to clean that up real quick and set that aside. The hybrid ink, because it is a hybrid ink, it needs to make sure that it doesn't bleed, it needs to be dry. So I just heat it a little bit with the my heat tool and set it aside while I finish up or start the backgrounds I'm going to do. So this is a piece of the Craft Perfect watercolor paper, and I wet it really good with some spray and water, and then I'm going to add some of the shimmer powders in Cherry Bomb and Catherine Wheel, and I just keep adding it and adding more water until I kind of get to where I'm happy with it. I wanted it to be really light and diluted and soft, and have a little bit of puddling and a little bit of just some texture. Most of that gets kind of covered up between the glimmer paste and the little llama. But anyway, so I set that aside, and now I'm going to work on the other background piece. And I take the hybrid ink that is called Panama Rose. It was part of the Tonic Craft Kit number 17, I believe, but it's a set of the 3 cubes. So I'm going to use the stencil brush and just add it to another piece of watercolor paper, kind of concentrating more of it in the middle, sort of fanning my way out. And again, this gets mostly covered up, so probably could have skipped all that, but I just add a light color of that, and then I am going to use the stencil on top of it to add a tone-on-tone color. Before I get to that one, oh no, actually I do go ahead and do that. So I use the, it's the little embellishment mousse. It's a mini one, and it's in the color, let's see, pink Flambé, sorry, and it was part of the craft kit number 17, and it's a really hot pink, but I used one of the blending sponges and just lightly dabbed it on through the stencil there. I wanted to have a little bit of texture and use several different of the mediums, but I also wanted it to be a pretty constant kind of color in the background. So that's why I chose to do these two different things. And I thought this would be better because this is sort of the masculine version, if you will, card, and then the other one will be sort of the feminine one with more of the glittery, you know, glimmer paste and things like that. So I'm going to wipe that off real quick, my stencil, and then move on to adding the glimmer paste in Moonstone. And it is absolutely gorgeous. It's like rock candy. So I'm just going to dry those real quick and make sure it's completely dry before I add the Moonstone. And I'm going to use a palette knife. So I'm going to tape that down with washi and make sure it stays pretty good because I don't want to get any of the paste underneath my stencil. So once I open that up, I'm going to put a pretty thin coat of the paste down with my palette knife. And then I'm going to set both of those off to dry. I mean, it looks like sugar. It's just gorgeous, and it dries so beautifully. So I'm going to peel all that up and wipe down kind of the corners of the, or the edges of the piece with my finger. All right, now while those dry, I'm going to start to color my images. And I'm going to use the Nuvo alcohol markers, which are great because I love the brush tip that's on it is very stiff. It's not really a super, you know, brushy brush tip, so brushy brush. So it does actually keep its shape really well, and it makes it easier for coloring tight spaces. So I'm going to zoom in on that real quick, and I'm just going to show coloring one of these. So I used this light gray that's part of the light and shadows set. Each of the markers sets come in sets of 3 that kind of blend together, or they're sort of all sort of tones of the same kind of color, which is great. It takes the guesswork out of trying to figure out which colors to use, and it has an amazing price point. And I love the way they color. I mean, they're really easy and user friendly. And so anyway, I just start with that sort of gray color, and I add a little bit of this pale lavender color as a shadow, and I kind of blend it out with the blender marker there. And then I'm going to color in the blanket here, and using these are the I believe these are the aquamarine kind of set. And like I said, that one sort of inset piece of the blanket has a separate die, so that's the piece that will I'll color a second time and then pop it up on a little bit of foam or a dimensional adhesive and make it sort of look like it's standing up on it, which I thought would be cute. So I'm going to use some other colors here. This is like one of the sets of green. I believe it's Irish clover. And I'm going to use some of the fragrant orange. And I believe that's it. And then some of the, one of the darker purples. This is one of the rosy pinks, sort of a dark pink. I'm going to color all of the hearts with it. And I picked these colors because I thought they would look nice and bright, but also because they went well with the vintage drops that I'm going to use to give each of those little sort of balls and some of the blanket some dimension with the drops at the end. So I'm going to use my little sidekick I got for Christmas. I'm real excited to have this. I know it seems a little excessive because I've already got, you know, a die cutting machine, but this it's so handy. It's the perfect size for something like this. It sits on my desk, and it's really fun to use. And so I'm going to trim those out, just cut out the little llamas, and that's the little blanket piece. And I'm going to do this for both sets, but I'll probably only show one of them. And this is a piece of fun foam that I used cutting the same piece, which I've started to do a lot more of instead of using some pop dots or foam dots, because I just really like having this smooth, consistent edge around the whole piece of it, especially if it's something intricate like this and it's not just sort of a sort of square piece. So I also cut out a couple of these off camera. I cut out a couple of these sort of scalloped circles out of just some plain white cardstock. And I'm just going to brush a little bit of this, one of the other Nuvo hybrid inks. It's called Polar Ice. It's like a really pale blue, around the edge of that, just to give it a little bit more color. So I'm going to trim up my background pieces now. The card base that I'm going to use is like a dove gray color, and it's a 5x5. So I'm going to trim these pieces up to, one of them I think I did 5.5, and the other one I did 5.25. So they're a little bit different sizes. But now that I have those all kind of worked out, I'm going to get ready to stamp my sentiment. And couldn't quite figure out what I was going to do yet. The sentiment has, or included in the set, there's this sort of little scallop piece that's, I guess, supposed to go around the bigger sentiment. So I did end up using that one for one of them. And this is another piece of the foam I cut out for the scallop circle. So I'm going to glue that using the Deluxe adhesive and set that aside, weight it down a little bit. Do the same thing for the llama. And then I'm going to adhere my background piece to the card base using my tape runner. Now I'm going to use some more adhesive to glue that down to the background piece. I'm going to add one pop dot to the little blanket there for the llama, and then work on my sentiment here. And another piece of the little stamp set, which I think is just adorable, are these little hearts. And what I love about them is that the die for each of the hearts is actually one little piece. So it's not just like individual ones, and it's got a nice little white border, which I thought was kind of neat and a little bit different from what I usually use. On this card, I'm going to emboss my sentiment with black embossing powder. So I'm going to use the Nuvo clear embossing ink onto the vellum, and I used my embossing powder tool before that. And then I'm going to add some black embossing powder. It's the fine detail in jet black, and this says "I Llama love you." So I add that to it, and then get my heat gun nice and hot, and I just mostly heated the back of the vellum, a little teeny bit on the front. So I'm going to add that underneath the llama and have it kind of standing off to the right side, and then have the little. I had planned to have the hearts on the left side, but it looked kind of funny, so I decided to add 2 sets of those, one in each of the corners. So I add pop dots to those, and I'm going to put them in the top right corner and the bottom left corner. I actually added a teeny little bit of adhesive glue behind those two, because all of the dimension from the glimmer paste. I wanted to make sure that it had like a really good grip on it. So then I just used a little bit of this smooth precision pen underneath the vellum and stuck that down to underneath the Llama and a little bit off the side of it there. All right, now I'm going to use several of the drops. I used the gold crystal drops in the bright gold, and then 3 of the vintage drops in Bonnie Blue, Postbox Red, and Pioneer Green. And that's a little close-up of what that looks like. And I'm going to use the Aqua Shimmer pen on top of it. And that is what it looks like. I did add some eyelashes to the Llama there. That's the other one with the other sentiment on it you can see. So these are the close-ups of both of the cards. And then you can see that's the final piece of the whole card there. Thanks so much for stopping by today. I am so thankful to have everybody that helps support me and my channel, and I really appreciate all the comments and feedback anybody gives. You can see a complete listing of all the supplies I used in the description below, and check out more on my blog and also on the Tonic website. Thanks again, and I hope you have a great day. Bye.